What's going on, guys? This is Aiden, Bandwagon Sports. Today is going to be a short video, just a tier list, not too much going on. Um, but this is a tier list of some of the greatest rivalries in college football. And this is subjective to how fun they are to watch, fights, all that stuff, just the entertainment that these games bring. Um, Starting off, Battle for the Bell. I never watched that game in my entire life. I've never even looked at it. Never seen it. It's not appealing to me. Both of those teams. I mean, Miami is terrible. Cincinnati has been pretty decent the past couple years, but not. No. Um, Kansas, Missouri. I feel like this is pretty average. I mean, Missouri and Kansas, both very subpar teams, not very good. Um, there's just not a whole lot going on, especially in that rivalry. I don't I don't like it very I don't like it very much. The games are usually kind of boring. Um, yeah, Michigan State. The past couple of years, fights, locker room scrums. You got Michigan State players getting charged with assault for what they do, like for the fights that happen. Crazy, crazy stuff. It's unbelievable, but this is a heated rivalry, and I absolutely love watching these games because the games are usually good, and so are the fights. Um, Alabama LSU. I mean, LSU when when both okay, we're gonna yeah when both are good, when both teams are good, the rivalry is amazing. But when LSU is terrible and Alabama is one of the best teams in college football, it's not it's not fun to watch. But this is pretty over the past 10 or so years, this rivalry has been amazing to watch, especially when it's in Baton Rouge. This year it's not gonna be, but I still expect an incredible game. Alabama Tennessee, you're gonna throw it into occasional upsets. Tennessee is just starting to get good, and they have not been good for. They were good last year, and that's the only year they've been good. It is a fun rivalry to watch because Tennessee usually has very high powered offense, and Tennessee usually has some teams that could upset Alabama, but it just never happens, and it's never no. Ooh, I was okay. So I was watching this game, um, this year and this past year, and this game was an incredible game. Arkansas did end up upsetting LSU because LSU was like the fifth ranked team in the country or something, and then because they only had one loss, and then they lost to Arkansas, and then they lost to Georgia. It was not a very good team, or not a very good. Um, LSU did not finish out the season strong, um, but this game was incredible, and I love watching this game, especially like the tier says when both teams are good. Georgia and Auburn is another very good. Is the oldest rivalry in the Deep South, or the Deep South's oldest rivalry. My bad. Um, I think it's an incredible rivalry, but mostly because I am a Georgia fan. But there's not. You usually can tell, right? Like you know who's gonna win what game because it's just the yes there are occasional upsets like 2017 and the Hail Mary where it bounced off of two Georgia players and right into the hands of the Auburn player. There's some like that, stuff like that that just happens and it makes this so good. but other than that, it's not very good. Um, Arizona State, average. There's not a whole lot to say about that. Both of the teams are mediocre at best every year. Same with UNC Virginia. Virginia the past couple of years has been terrible, and UNC has been slightly above average. Not a very good rivalry. I'm not sitting down on a Saturday and going, the UNC Virginia game's on. Let me watch that. I don't do that. Same thing with Stanford Cal. You don't go home, turn on that game to watch a whole lot. Um, Georgia Tech. You could probably put it in average because of how lopsided the series is. Georgia Tech hasn't touched Georgia in like 10 years. But the fights are good and the chippiness is amazing. I love watching that game because it's a rivalry game, because things get heated very fast. Um, Florida State, Miami, there. It's usually a pretty good series. It's usually a pretty good. Uh, I I'm gonna put it here. It's usually a pretty good rivalry. I like watching it. Um, Actually, I'm gonna put it in when both are good, because if both of those teams are good, it's just an incredible, like, I love watching that game, and it's just an incredible game. Um, Oregon State. We're gonna put it here. Occasional upsets. Last year we did see an upset, and that was an incredible game. I loved watching it. Oregon almost came back, but it was not a very good game. Um, or but it, not a very good game. It was just it it was a it was not to the rivalry in itself is not up to the level of any of these. Um, Not from what I've seen, and not from the series scores. Um, USC UCLA. I'm gonna put it in average. It's usually very high powered, very like good offensive games. There's not a whole lot of defense being played, especially with USC and UCLA. It's not a whole lot, but they are usually fun games to watch because there's a lot of offense, a lot of electric plays. There's just a lot to do, or a lot to watch. The Apple Cup. Again, I'm gonna put it in average. Um, there's not. I mean, I don't a lot with like these games. I don't turn on the TV on Saturday and ask myself if it's rivalry weekend. If Ohio State Michigan's on, I'm not turning that game off to go watch Washington State in Washington. Um, that's no, you just can't do that. Um, Army Navy game. This is my opinion only. Army Navy is a legendary rivalry because despite it being a rivalry, the respect that goes into it to just get down, get dirty, and play the game, and then to come together, and the game also happens on a bye week between conference championships and the bowl season. It saves us a week, and it still gives us college football that we need. Army Navy is a legendary rivalry. The Bedlam series. I love watching me some Bedlam. I love Oklahoma State versus Oklahoma, especially the past couple of years. Oklahoma State, in 2021, had an incredible game-winning drive. I loved watching that game. That was one of my favorite games that I've watched. It's a super fun series. Lots of hate, lots of rivalry. Yeah. Backyard brawl. Honestly, up until this year, I didn't know they were rivals. I had no idea until Pitt played West Virginia. in the opening game of the season. I didn't know they were rivals. I couldn't have told you that. I don't, and they don't play on rivalry weekend. So I like honestly, I really couldn't tell you that they were rivals. Um, Virginia Tech. I'm gonna put it in average because much like I mean, both of these teams are so terrible and so horrible. I just can't put this rivalry even high any higher because the games might be fun to watch and the games might be good, but the teams are so trash. I feel like there's nothing to watch. There's like nothing there. Um, I don't know what that is. The Holy War. This is a super fun series. Utah, BYU, absolute incredible games when both of these teams are good. The the games that this rivalry has produced are insane. I love the games that get played in this rivalry because they blew out and read out. The jerseys are sick. The game is absolutely phenomenal, and there are a ton of upsets. You never know who's gonna win this one. It's always unpredictable because of the rivalry. Florida Georgia, world's largest cocktail party. Occasional upsets. There's not too many upsets. It is a great rivalry to watch, especially. I mean, there's not a whole lot of fights. There's not a whole lot of getting out there, swinging, and it's not a whole lot. But it is a very good rivalry, and there are occasional upsets. There are the occasional good Florida teams who come in and smack Georgia. There's not a whole lot of them, but there are definitely some of those teams. Minnesota and Iowa. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I couldn't tell you they were rivals. The rivalry is terrible. Minnesota, Iowa. I mean, Iowa's one of the worst offenses in the country. It's the worst offense in the country. You can't tell me I'm wrong. And Minnesota is just a terrible team. They're a terrible program. They haven't had a good team since like 2019, 2020, when in that whatever year they upset Penn State. They just no. Um, Florida State and Clemson. I'm gonna put it at average because the past 10 years, it hasn't been very good. Actually, when both are good, when both are good, when both of these teams are they have a lot of firepower, and they are very fun games to watch. Um, Lots of defense, especially coming from the Clemson side. Um, some of these games can be super fun. Over the past 10 years, they haven't been very good because Florida State hasn't been very good. But in the 2010s, early 2010s, man, that freaking series was good. In the late 2000s, early 2010s, that was a phenomenal series. Um, Also don't know what that is. Um, Texas and Texas A&M. When they play, they are the there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of it's Texas A&M. Those teams, very good historical programs, very good, very tons of very good um, teams, players come through these programs. Is very it's a great rivalry, and there's not. I'm gonna put it here because I think it's that good of a rivalry. That's going down there because I do not know what that is. The Iron Bowl. It could probably go up here. but I'm putting it down here. Iron Bowl, super fun games. There are not a ton of games. There are not a ton of rivalries that I can look at and say I would rather watch than the Iron Bowl. I think in terms of these rivalries, the ones that I would rather watch than the Iron Bowl, Ohio State is the only one I would rather watch. Ohio State, Michigan, it's the only one I would rather watch because there's not there in this you got physicality, you got fights, you got everything. This is an incredible rivalry. It always produces amazing games. You never know what's going to happen. Super unpredictable, and I love everything about this rivalry. Keystone Classic. Another one. Could not tell you they were rivals. I could not. I wouldn't even have guessed it. I've never watched a Penn State Pitt game. I don't see the games being very good because Penn State's usually a very good team and Pitt's usually not a very good team. Um, Michigan Notre Dame. I mean, I could see this being a good. I don't. I've never watched this. I've I've never watched a Michigan Notre Dame game. I've never seen a Michigan Notre Dame game. I've it's just I've never watched it. It's not a very good rivalry in my opinion, and I don't know too much about this rivalry because I just never see it get played. It's just not. Florida and Tennessee. It usually tends to be a very good game. The the games are usually pretty good. I'm gonna put it here because some of these games can be very good, and they are exciting to watch, especially when Florida has a good team and when Tennessee has a good team, because it's not very often, and there's not a whole lot that happens in this. But when both of those teams are very good, this game is good. Oklahoma, Nebraska, couldn't tell you it was a rivalry. The game, Michigan, Ohio State, legendary rivalry. You can say what you want. This is one of my favorite rivalries. It always produces an exciting and electric game. I love it. Very physical. There's a lot of hate in this game, and I just love it. The Palmetto Bowl is heated. There's always lots of chippiness, lots of fight. Usually produces a pretty good game. It's a lot like the Iron Bowl. Very unpredictable. It's not lopsided at all. And they're usually very good games. The Sunflower Showdown. I mean, Kansas State. I'm gonna put it in average because I can't tell you a whole lot about this rivalry. I mean, I can see it being very lopsided, but I can also see it not being very lopsided because both of these teams usually aren't very good. It's not. I mean, I don't. There's not very fun games to watch. Colorado State, putting it down there. Nobody watches that. I guarantee it. The War on I-4 is a very good rivalry. I love watching it. The games are always very chippy, and everybody's always fighting, and there's always a fight going on, no matter what. And that it is a very fun game to watch because usually the games are good, and there are lots of upsets, much like the Palmetto Bowl and the Iron Bowl, very unpredictable. And the name that's one of the best names for a bowl game I've seen. The Egg Bowl. is I mean, it's very chippy. There's a lot of notorious things that have happened during the Egg Bowl. Lots of fights. Usually produces a very good game, but there's not a whole lot going on there. Um, USC Notre Dame, in my opinion, very average. It's usually very lopsided. Um, the games are never really close, and Notre Dame's it's just a very boring game because you're watching zero defense and zero offense being played. I mean, maybe Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams can turn it into a fun game, but I just can't see it being a very fun game. Oklahoma, Texas, the Cotton Bowl, one of my absolute favorite games to watch. It is an outstanding game every year. It's super fun, and there aren't a whole lot of rivalry games that I would watch instead of this one. Florida State, I got to put it in average. I put it in occasional upsets because usually both of these teams have pretty decent teams. Usually they're both top 25 teams, and usually they're pretty good. Um, but they're the recently not very good. Not a whole. My bad. Um, not. I mean, Florida State, especially this year and next year and the year before. Um, they're gonna run away with the series. It's not gonna be close. Um, in my opinion, it's not gonna be close. So I just think it's gonna get very boring. Baylor TCU. Occasional upsets. Baylor's usually got an outstanding program. It's usually Baylor that wins these games. I can't say a whole lot more because I don't usually watch them. But yeah. Harvard and Yale is a very good rivalry. I'm never picking it over any of these games to watch because it's not very quality football. But it is an outstanding rivalry for the fact that these are both two historic programs and these are both two amazing teams historically. And it's always chippy, it's always fun. The nerds playing football. I love the game. It's always really fun to watch. Duke UNC, it's not as heated as the basketball. I'm gonna put it in average as a football rivalry because Duke usually has a terrible team. Duke is never very good. UNC is always pretty decent. I can see this being lopsided every year. LSU A&M, another one. I just have to put it in average. Not a whole lot to say about it. Same with this one. Same with Louisville, Kentucky. LSU A&M. Actually, we can put it in occasional upsets because we can put it in the tier above. Because the games are usually very chippy. There's usually a couple fights. They're usually pretty fun to watch, but there's not a whole lot to say about LSU A&M. And then Kentucky Louisville, it's just Kentucky Louisville. I'm gonna put them down here because yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what your list would have looked like. I'll see you guys in the next one.